Okay, picture this. What if the world's most critical energy choke point just slammed shut? Today, we're diving into a really intense scenario where a crisis in the Strait of Hormuz isn't just some random disaster, but maybe, just maybe, it's a calculated move in a massive global power play.
So, this scene is set. It's April 2026. The place? The Strait of Hormuz. After diplomacy completely collapses and military strikes begin, the waterway is officially closed. Just like that, the lifeblood of the global economy, it's been cut.
And the scale of this thing, it's just staggering. We're talking about nearly a third of all the oil that travels by sea suddenly stranded. Tankers are just sitting there, dead in the water, cutting off the energy supply for entire continents. This is a supply shock on a level we've never seen before. Which brings us to this really unsettling question. Is all this chaos just the tragic result of a conflict that's spiraled out of control? Or is it something more, a deliberate, incredibly high-stakes strategic move? All right, let's start with part one, a strait in crisis. First, we need to wrap our heads around the immediate economic damage from an energy shock this big. And this is where we get to the core of this whole theory. What's being called the American advantage? You have to ask, how could a disaster of this magnitude possibly benefit the United States? Well, the logic here is pretty cold, and it focuses purely on energy and finance. The first and most obvious effect, the price. With that much supply suddenly choked off, Brent crude oil prices just skyrocket. We're talking a 50% jump. Now, this causes absolute panic in most global markets, but it also creates a brand new landscape of economic winners and losers. And this is where today's world is so different. I mean, this is not the 1970s. Back then, the US was importing its energy, which made it super vulnerable to shocks like this. But today, the situation is completely flipped. The US is a net energy exporter. It's suddenly in a position to be the critical lifeline for its allies. And being that lifeline has huge long-term consequences. Think about it. With Middle Eastern oil cut off, allies in Europe and Asia, they don't have many other options. They have to turn to the US. And we're not just talking about short-term sales. We're talking about long-term energy contracts that could lock their economies into American infrastructure for decades to come. But here's the thing. This strategy isn't just about selling oil. It's about what you buy it with. And that's where this incredibly powerful financial tool comes into play, the petrodollar system. Basically, it just means that oil is traded around the world in US dollars. So if the world is desperate for energy, it's also desperate for dollars. And this creates this amazing feedback loop, right? It starts with countries desperately needing US energy. To get that energy, they have to buy US dollars. Then, when they have a bunch of extra dollars, what do? They invest them in the safest place they can think of, US Treasury bonds. And what does that do? It directly helps finance the US government's huge deficits. It's a cycle that just keeps reinforcing itself. And on top of all that, you've got this powerful psychological thing that happens. Anytime there's a major global crisis, investors get spooked. They pull their money out of anything that looks risky, and they flood into what they see as the ultimate safe haven, US debt. This tidal wave of cash strengthens the US financial position right as the rest of the world is teetering on the edge. Okay, but, and this is a huge but, this entire grand strategy is a massive, massive gamble. It's filled with what the original analysis calls poison pills, risks that could make the whole plan backfire in the most catastrophic way imaginable. And here's the heart of the danger. The source analysis warns, and I'm quoting here, that the strategy carries poison pill risks that could trigger a deep recession at home. So the very moves designed to make the US stronger could actually end up doing the exact opposite. So let's break down the three main dangers here. First, global stagflation. That's the worst of both worlds, a stagnant economy with soaring inflation. Surging energy prices create a cost of living crisis everywhere, which crushes demand for everything, including US goods. Second, inflation at home. Even if you're an exporter, you're not immune to global prices. This means record high pain at the pump for American voters. And third, just the physical destruction of it all. A long war could destroy so much energy infrastructure that the world might not be able to recover for years. And that second point, this is what it looks like for a normal person. All that talk about geopolitical leverage doesn't mean a whole lot when you're facing insane prices just to fill up your car. And that, as you can imagine, is politically explosive. And, the physical risk isn't some far-off possibility. In this scenario, it's very real.
Within just a few weeks of the conflict starting, reports are already coming in that more than 40 critical energy assets across the Middle East have been damaged. Every single attack is another blow to the future of global energy security.
So let's bring this all together, right? What we have is a truly high-stakes gamble, where every single potential strategic gain is shadowed by an equally powerful and potentially devastating reality check.
And here are the trade-offs, just laid bare. On one side, you have the potential for American energy dominance. But the reality check? Angry voters facing sky-high gas prices at home. You have the potential gain of more countries buying U.S. debt. The risk? A global recession means they might not be able to afford it. And finally, while this strategy might weaken some rivals, it could actually push others, like China and Russia, into a much closer blockade-proof energy partnership. When you boil it all down, it comes to this. The core gamble is forcing the entire world to rely on U.S. energy, but doing it runs the risk of completely breaking the very financial system that the U.S. has been leading for almost a century.
And so that leaves us with one final, really sobering question to think about. Is any strategic advantage, even becoming the dominant energy power, really worth the risk of breaking the entire global economy?